This workshop was recorded live in early November 2020, and it's part of the Etsy U program. What is Etsy U? Well, basically, Etsy has been teaming up with experienced sellers and community leaders to bring you the latest resources and information to help your shop grow. I've done a whole series of these Etsy U workshops that are all available for free here on my YouTube channel. There's SEO, product photography, branding, and social media. The links to all of these workshops are available in the description below. I hope you check them out and that they help you grow your Etsy shop. If you don't know who I am, my name is Jess I have been running my own Etsy shop since 2008. When I started a jewellery making hobby and then had too much jewellery and wondered what to do with it and thought I'd sell it online, and I stumbled across this little website called Etsy that almost nobody had heard about because it had only started a few years before, and I set up my shop, and the rest, as they say, is history. And I've been selling full-time my handmade business since 2010. I have my own website as well, and I still to this day sell on Etsy quite successfully. And I also run Create and Thrive. So this YouTube channel is part of Create and Thrive, which is a business, a blog, podcast, YouTube channel. I've got a membership site, courses where basically my goal is to help you turn your handmade hobby into a thriving and profitable handmade business. That's what I'm all about here on this channel. And that's what this workshop is all about today, helping you to solve the branding part of that puzzle. Okay, so here's a little overview of what we're going to be working on today. Defining and creating a brand promise. We've got developing a branded design palette, customizing the look of your Etsy shop. So we're going to talk about how you can use what you're learning here to actually customize your Etsy shop. We've got branded packaging and promotional materials. So we're going to talk about that. Customer service and social media. Customer service is actually a really big part of branding that you might not have thought about. And I'll tell you one of my own stories that's made a big difference there. And then the worksheets I told you about, so you can actually go and do this work yourself. So first of all, what is a brand? To you, I would love to hear your thoughts in the chat. When you hear the word brand, what does that mean to you? What sort of things pop into your head that speak to a brand, whether it's your brand or someone else's brand, just brands in general? Kind of how would you define it? What are the elements that come to mind? What feelings do they evoke, your favorite brands? Feel free to share your favorite brands as well, like not only Etsy shops, but if there's a particular brand in the world that you love, tell us why, and we'll start thinking about why these things appeal to us. What is the brand? Why does it appeal to you, this particular business over another business? We all tend to fall in love with brands that feel like us, that feel like they connect with us. So we've got instant recognition of what you sell, who you are, how you look like, what your business is known for, a consistent theme, awesome. Your company identity, a brand is recognizable. Lots of great suggestions there. So yeah, basically, the long story short is a brand is the promise that a shop makes to its customers. So it gives your business a personality and communicates who you are and what you care about. That's what a brand does. It creates memorable impressions and helps customers know what to expect from your business. So, it's the combination of the image you're trying to project for your business plus associations and memories that your customers bring to the table when they encounter that image. That is everything about a brand. It all comes together. It's much more than your color scheme and your logo. I think when we're starting out with branding, we kind of think, oh yeah, I have to get the perfect logo and I've got to make sure my colors are spot on, and that's what matters. But it's so much more than that, and we're going to go into that in depth in this workshop. Trusted brand consistency and product quality and identity. Yep, cohesive look. Some great suggestions. Awesome. Okay, so step 1, define and create your brand promise. So a brand promise comes from your brand values, which come from your why. So what's the why? Why are you doing what you're doing? What are the values that underpin what you are doing? And then from there, you can take those personal values, turn them into brand values, and then you want to communicate those brand values through everything that you do, all of your communication, your visual communication, your written communication, everything you do in regards to your business. The idea is to communicate the brand promise, which is underpinned by your brand values. So a brand promise is a value or experience a business's customers can expect every time they interact with your business. When a business delivers on that promise, the brand's value increases in the mind of the customers. However, of course, if you're not delivering on your promises, and we've all known brands that haven't delivered on their promises, and we usually think badly of them for that reason, right? They've let you down. They've promised something, but they've not delivered it. And that is where brands get in trouble, where they let down their customers, where their communication doesn't match with reality of how they actually act. So once you capture what's really special about you and your business and your products, it's easier to communicate your USP or your unique selling proposition to your target audience consistently in everything that you do. So we've covered most of this, I think. So brings the unique story of your business to life is right. And this, I think, is a really important thing to consider, is this word story. A lot of us, especially in the handmade industry, we feel a bit icky about selling. We feel like, not really comfortable with, tooting our own horn and saying how awesome our stuff is. I want you to flip your mindset and think less about selling and more about telling a story. And that's really what it comes down to. And if you really examine the way that marketing has gone in the last, especially decade, is very much more focused on storytelling now, very much more focused on using like real people and social proof. So social proof is where you get a customer or a user of your product to shout you from the rooftops and say how awesome you are, like testimonials basically. There's a reason why infomercials are packed full of testimonials. That's social proof, and we tend to trust another customer telling us stuff about a business rather than the business telling us how awesome they are. So taking advantage of social proof is really powerful as well. So when you define that promise that you're making to your customers, you can then communicate that and it will bring your brand to life. And of course, you want it to stand out from the crowd and connect with your target market. Another mistake people make, trying to be everything to everybody. You shouldn't try to please all of the people all of the time. You should just try to please the very small niche of your target audience who will absolutely fall in love with what you do, and don't worry about everybody else, because there's enough people out there who are just right for your business that if you communicate the unique values of your brand, they will fall in love with it and become loyal customers. There's a concept called 1,000 True Fans. I can't remember who came up with it, but it's this, I know Seth Godin talks about it a lot, this idea that all you really need to succeed is 1,000 true fans of your business, because not only will they buy all of your stuff, they'll shout your brand from the rooftops. That might seem like a lot of people, but over time, you can definitely get there. Okay, so let's ask a few questions to think about this. Why do you sell your products? Who is your target market and what problems do your products solve for them? What are the unique features and benefits of your products? And what types of feelings and experiences do you want your customers to associate with your shop? So shoppers are really drawn to authenticity and the personal aspect of what we do, especially as handmade businesses. We really have a leg up here because we are already a small individual personal business. And the reason why people buy handmade is because they want that connection, that quality, and to support those sorts of business. Look at Nick doing the research and showing links for us. Awesome job. Thank you. So think about how the story of your business can be infused into your brand, and especially pulling out key backstory details that will connect with your ideal customer. So what's the creative spark, interesting milestones, how your business has evolved over time. Okay, so the next one is target market. So understanding who they are and how your products will improve their life and it'll help you create a good message and identity that resonates with their values, interests, and needs. So one thing we do in our jewellery business, so we make sterling silver jewellery, so a lot of the rings I'm wearing, and we specialise in wedding rings. That's our biggest part of the market. We have a couple of different we have a couple of different ideal customers. So this is another thing. You might not just have one ideal customer, you might have a couple, but as long as they're similar enough that your messaging from one is okay to kind of cross-pollinate with the other, it's not a problem. Some of you might have come up against the should I start a second shop question because you come up with disparate ideas that seem too disparate. That's a whole nother workshop and podcast, but long story short, try not to because it's a lot more work, but sometimes you have to. Okay, so one thing we do is we really draw on the elements of our story that connect with the people who are interested in buying that product. So most of our customers for our wedding rings, so they're sterling silver, they're usually young, they're usually eco-minded because it's all made with recycled silver. They usually have a bit of a alternative view, like they're not traditional because they don't care about having a gold wedding ring, right? They just want something that's right for them, that fits their personality, their lifestyle, their values. So we talk about, our own story of meeting and getting married and the fact that we work together in the business. We're a happily married couple making rings for you, and hopefully you'll become a happily married couple. So we kind of draw out the similarities in our story to our potential customers, and that's part of our brand story. So that's when it comes to Create and Thrive, I rarely talk about that sort of stuff because it's not really important to my brand, right? So you've got to pick out the elements of your story that will resonate with your ideal customer. So creating a profile of your audience is a really good idea, and there's a whole worksheet about that later on, so I won't go into too much detail. It has a bunch of questions that will help you to determine who those people are. So we'll get to that later on. And then we talk about your products. So what do your products reliably and uniquely bring to the table? So what makes them different? What makes your products different to other people's? It might be something small, but it might be significant. So with us, we make wedding rings, but they're sterling silver. We make sterling silver wedding rings, and they're also made from recycled silver. So we try to draw out the unique elements. We make sterling silver wedding rings. We also do oxidized sterling silver wedding rings, which is unusual. So bringing out those unique elements, and that's your USP or your unique selling proposition, and trying to get that across. So think about it from the customer's perspective. What is unique and special about your products that would really appeal to them? And that's what you want to do. Okay, so feelings and experiences. So descriptive words that you can use to differentiate and position yourself in the competition. There's another worksheet for this at the end. It's called the 20-10-4 exercise. You choose 20 words to describe your brand, then you whittle them down to 10 and then down to 4. So it kind of, you start big and then whittle it down to get a bit more specific. Because again, remember, you're not trying to be everything to everyone. You're trying to get really clear about what your brand is, what your brand promise is, and the things that will matter to them. So an example here, a pet portrait, someone who does pet portraits, who their 4 words are soulful, spiritual, accessible, and playful, will attract a different customer to those that are looking for something sophisticated, experienced, elegant, and chic. They just immediately give you different ideas of what that is going to look like, what sort of art style it's going to be, etc. Okay, so this is a good just summary of how you could frame a brand promise. Every experience with your business conveys unique selling proposition and key values to my customers. So again, remember, I'm going to send you all these slides so you'll have access to this, and you can use this framework when it comes to doing your own brand work. So that's where you come up with the brand promise. Now, it's basically an elevator pitch for your business. It's concise, it's bold, it's straightforward. It talks about the benefit your product offers over your competitors, and the simpler and clearer the message is, the better chance you have standing out and being remembered. So try not to be generic here. Try to, words like unique or, sort of Words that mean something but don't mean anything specific, we want to try to avoid those sorts of words. I mean, handmade you could include because that is an important part of your business, but again, that might not be specific enough. Maybe you want to say handmade in the Sunshine Coast, Australia. That's another element of our story. We talk about where we live and that we have solar power and we live on tank water. We try to live a sort of an eco-friendly lifestyle. I often walk to the post office, things like that. So you can draw out those sort of elements of your story as well. So an effective brand promise really combines the catchiness of a tagline and reinforces it with the essence of your company's mission or your business's mission. So you want to stand for one thing. That's that old saying, people who stand for everything stand for nothing. Stand for what your business is all about. And don't be tempted to sway from that. So what might happen as you start getting successful is you might get people contacting you and saying, oh, I love your thing. Could you do this for me? If it's in line with your brand promise and your values, say yes. But if it's not, don't be afraid to say no to people who aren't the right customer. Because chances are, if they're not the right customer, they might not end up being happy with the result, and that's not a situation you want to be in. Okay, so don't be afraid to ask for feedback on this too from your friends, family, colleagues. If you're in my community, the Thriver Circle, you can always put a question in there for my feedback and feedback from the other members of the community. But there might be another Facebook group you're a part of. Get a little bit of feedback on this, and you can sort of narrow it down a little bit. All right. Now, I'm just going to pause there for a second. I'm going to have a sip of my tea. If you have any questions on what we've talked about so far, I know I've thrown a lot at you in the last few minutes, pop them in the chat and I'll answer them. But again, we do have some Q&A time at the end, so if you're not sure yet, we can talk a little bit more then as well. Okay, so while I'm waiting for those to come through, if any, we'll just do this next slide, which is about communicating your brand to people. So we've got the 3 phases of this: before the sale, during the sale, and after the sale. These are all important parts of communicating your brand to your customers. So before the sale, you've got an attractive logo and shop home. Your visual design is really important. It is important. It's not the most important thing, but it is important. Your business cards, banner ads, promotional postcards, any other promotional stuff stuff that you put out into the world. So you want to use the same color scheme, logo, fonts in all of your design. This goes also for social media, for your blog. It's your imagery, it's also your copy. So copy is any written anything that you put out under your business name. So your shop about page, your descriptions, your social media posts, everything you want to think about. Every single time you want to think about, who am I talking to, and what sort of language do I want to use, and what sort of words do I want to get across to people. Yes, you can check in afterwards. Thank you so much. There'll be another slide at the end about that. Okay, so that's before the sale. Alrighty. During the sale. So item descriptions with the tone of voice that reflects your brand personality, telling the story behind your product and how it relates to your brand values, using a photo background and props to convey your shop's identity. Now, we talked about this in the workshop yesterday. If you haven't already seen that, it is available on my YouTube channel. You can go watch the product photography Etsy workshop. So do check that out, especially if you're not strong with your photography. It is absolutely key to get right. And I did talk about it in yesterday's workshop, how important understanding both your photography and your brand is together, because until you understand what your brand is and what you want to convey with it, taking your photos can be a bit of a challenge because you won't know what sort of feeling or background or props or aesthetic that you want with your photos. If you kind of are a bit new to all of this and you want to redo the whole brand thing, you may end up deciding you want to retake your photos because they just don't reflect what your initial attempt to take photos. Don't be afraid to re-photograph. I know it's an absolute pain and it's a lot of work, but if you do, especially if you have reproducible products, if you do it right, once you get it right, you've got those photos forever and you can keep selling stuff. Like I've got photos from 10 years ago and I'm still selling those products. So it is worth the effort to get it right. Okay, so after the sale, design your packaging to be consistent with your brand's personality, because a well-packed item will impress your buyers and hopefully turn them into fans and loyal repeat customers. So any part of the packaging is a great time to put your shop URL on there, remind them of your brand name. One of the issues we have selling on Etsy is that people will often forget who we are individually. Someone will be like, hey, where'd you get those earrings? And they'll be like, oh, I bought them on Etsy. Which is great for Etsy and it's great for us overall, but it's not so great if we're trying to create brand awareness. We want to actually people to remember our particular shop, right? So make sure that you're reminding of them of that in your packaging. So we have simple packaging. I should have brought I keep forgetting to bring props along. We have simple packaging with like a earring card and we stamp our name on that, and then it's on our return address label. We have our business, our logo, so it's there on there as well, and the colors and the feel of it are all in line with our brand. And we also include this little sheet that we print out with a photo of the two of us on it, our brand name, our like social media links, and then we put a handwritten message on there. So we're trying to associate, our faces as well with the brand. So we're real people, and people are more likely to connect with us and remember us. So that's something to think about as well. So, and this last one's really, really important, your customer service. This is a huge, huge thing. Making sure that your customer service is top-notch and is branded. You actually want to make sure that the communication you're having with your customer is on brand. If you've got a really sort of young, hip sort of brand, and you write your messages like you're in a corporation from 1964, you're going to have a mismatch there between the two. So if your brand is casual, make sure your messages are somewhat casual and fun and friendly. Okay, it doesn't need to be super, especially if you come from the corporate world, it doesn't need to be super stuffy and professional. Like I'll always use salutation, like hi, person's name, and I sign off cheers, Jess, because that's just a common casual sign off here in Australia. And then we have really in-depth messages that we have for all different reasons that customers might get in touch with us. Great thing about your Etsy conversations, or Etsy messages, I think they're called now, you can save snippets. So pre-saved snippets of text that you can just use over and over again and like personalize if you need to. So you can do a good job of writing those once and then just use them over and over. I actually have a whole workshop in the Thriver Circle about your thank you message. So I send every single customer a manual thank you email, and it's really long. It's like 5 paragraphs long, but I spent a lot of time crafting that in order to really get into the meat of our brand and our story and really connect emotionally with our customers, while also informing them of all the stuff they needed to know, like how long it's going to take us to make their thing, how long it's going to take to ship to them, when they can get in touch with me, when do I answer emails. It's all woven in there, all those factual details, but in a very emotive message. And when I switched from like a boring thanks for your order, we'll have it done in this many days, it'll ship now, blah blah blah, to writing this much longer message, I got a huge increase in customer engagement. So customers emailing me back after that message and just starting a conversation. So many of them email me back and go, oh my God, this is so lovely. I'm so excited to buy from a small business, and support small business. And it's made a huge difference, I think, in the happiness of my customers and in customer service overall. And we get a lot of reviews from our happy customers. So that sort of thing is well worth doing. Okay, let's move on to our design. So the visual identity is obviously very important. We live in a continually more and more visual world. Even Etsy themselves, if you look at a listing now on Etsy, it's basically the images, the reviews, the title, a couple of attributes, and the description's like hidden. It's literally one line and you have to expand it because they realize that's people are shopping by picture, really. It's important to put stuff in everything relevant in your description, but it's really important to get your photos right. And I actually recommend and suggest that if you have really, really important details that they need to know before they purchase, you actually create an image with that information and put it in the photos, so that they're more likely to see that information. So just keep that in mind as a kind of way to get around this issue of people not reading the descriptions. So here's just some clear, nice, bright, branded images. So the design palette, it provides a reference guide for all the digital and print assets that your business needs. So your logo, your business cards, packaging, signage, product photos, and your aesthetic guidelines will be informed by your brand promise, and they'll help you illustrate the personality and values of your shop while consistently connecting to your target market. So the palette doesn't have to be set in stone, but decisions should always tie back to your values and your story and the style that you want to convey to your target market. So someone whose target market is 60 plus men is going to have a very different style to someone whose target market is 20 to 30-year-old women, generally speaking, because they generally will have different aesthetic likes and dislikes. Of course, you're generalizing, but that's okay. We have to do that because we don't know inside every single person's head, but we have to generalize based on the cues that we're seeing from our target market out there in the world. So use the 4 words that you choose in that 2010-4 worksheet to help you to connect with the feelings and experiences you want people to have with your shop, and then use that to help you design your color scheme and logo and all that sort of stuff, and your fonts. So a couple of nice designs here. They're doing a great job of tying their elements together. So the aesthetics in these 3 photos are very different. The shops, when you see these photos, you're going to expect very different things from these shops when you click through to them. Very different types of branding and colors and things like that. I mean, they're all appealing in different ways, but some will be, I'm curious which one's most appealing to you, whether it's Lulu Flora, Calicut Spice Co, or For the Host. I mean, looking at them, I'm like, it's a toss-up between Calicut Spice Co and For the Host. Probably the Spice Co one though, because although I'm not really the cook in the family, that might be something I'd buy just to try something new and fun. I love all the comments of you all saying I do the boring message. It's easy to do, and I did it for years as well, because you're like, well, I just need to get this information to them, but you're missing a really, really great opportunity to connect, use your brand story and connect with your customers. All right, so let me know which one of these appeals to you the most. Let's move on. Okay, so here's the elements: your colors, your fonts, and your photography. They set the tone of your business and tell your story. So with your colors, think about the tones and color combinations that evoke the personality of your brand. A really awesome tool that you can use, what's it called? It's Adobe Color Picker or something like that. Nick, if you could have a quick Google. I know there's a couple of different ones. So Color Wheel, maybe just say like Adobe Color Wheel or something like that. It's basically this website where it gives you a big color wheel, and it gives you all of the different color combinations, like complementary colors, triads, bicolor, like all these different ways of choosing color combinations. And you can like spin your little thingy around and pick the color, a color you really like, and it will give you colors that work with that color. So if you are a bit color challenged like I am, the idea of coming up with a color palette's a bit terrifying. Use a tool like that, which gives you automatically colors that work together, that aren't going to clash. And the best thing about that is it actually gives you a hex code as well, so the code for the internet for the color, so you can use that everywhere. Like on Canva, if you use that to design stuff, you can use the hex code there, and so on. He found it. Good job. All right. Oh, that's great. So Lois has just said, I used some of your wording from a recent presentation. I got the loveliest recommendation from the customer. She wrote about her interaction with me. I attribute it to the thank you letter. Yeah, it can make a huge, huge difference, definitely. Oh, coolers. Yeah, that's another one. There's a whole bunch of them out there, but it's well worth using one of those to help you work out your color scheme, because it'll make a big difference. So 2 to 5 complementary hues or colors would be great. There's another one from Canva as well. If you use Canva, they have a thing called choosing the perfect color palette. Let's see if I can copy this link. I can. Paste that in there. And that's another tool that you can use as well. All right, so the next one is typography, so your fonts, another challenging thing if you're not a designer. The fundamentals are simple. It should be clear to read. I can't tell you how many times I've come across a lovely handmade shop, but their fonts are just way too fancy and frilly and really hard to read. And not only handmade shops, I've seen it out there in the world numerous times. If I have to like squint to try to work out what your font is saying, it's not doing its job. I know it's tempting to use those really flowery, fancy scripts sometimes, and you can, but only if it's one that is also clearly readable. Think of someone whose English is their second language. Could they still read this font, or is it too over the top? So use fonts that have clear combinations. It's good to have like 2 fonts, so you might have a really clear serif font or even a sans serif font. And then you might want a script or a decorative font for embellishments or other parts of it. But again, please just make sure they're readable, especially if they're small. Really, really important. And you can use the fonts should have, certain fonts have certain feelings and looks to them, right? So you need to make sure that you are using fonts that appeal to your business, like that actually work with it and don't seem jarring with all your other design options. We've got a few more suggestions here. So Design Seeds has photos with color palettes on them. So if you like the overall look of the photo, you can see some of the colors that have been used. Cool. Inky Shark said, yeah, you should purchase the fonts if you're using for business. Yeah, unless you're using like Google fonts, which you can use and they're free to use. But if you're using a fancy font, that make sure to purchase it for sure. Yeah, so Yana's just said, I know someone that asked their designer to create a logo with the free fonts from Canva so they can easily design branded social media content. That's something to think about as well. If you are using something like Canva to design all of your stuff, I actually use it all the time. You've got to make sure the font's available in there. So that you can make sure you have consistent fonts. All right. Hassan, you might want to check out my SEO workshop. It's available over on my channel. Check that out. That'll help you with your traffic. All right. So, photography. Shoppers make assumptions about your business based on what they see in your photos. So it's important your images reflect the larger identity of your brand. We've talked a lot about this, but just make sure they echo the same color palette, the same style, aesthetic, cohesive backgrounds, styling that's not overdone. Make sure that your product is the star of the show. That's the most important thing. All right. So now we're going into customizing the look of your shop. So once you've established all of this stuff, you've got your story, you've got your colors, fonts, photos, then we incorporate each element into the design of your shop. So I've got a few examples. I've just brought up my shop as one example. So we've got the banner here, of course, and then we have my shop and my personal profile image. Got my logo image over here. So those are the 3 images. You can see the 3 branded images you can see here on this one. Now the banner I actually change somewhat regularly in that I've got a couple of different like ring images that I'll put up there, and I might move things around a little bit. And of course, as you can see, I use it for an important announcement as well because that's a really important announcement, and I like to have it in my banner so that people who visit my shop front are really, really clear on what will help, what the dates are. So you don't be afraid to use that space for that reason as well. I see a lot of shops doing that, but again, make sure it's in line with your brand. So, I'm using very similar fonts and colors there. You can see it's quite a simple palette because I'm reflecting the colors that are in the image, and the white and the dark sort of almost black blue sort of color that we've got going on there. My logo down the bottom there, you can see I've used the same or a similar font, so that the logo down there is a slightly different font because I updated it. And then the picture of me is, again, it's a simple like white background, grey shirt. I'm basically branded in the colours of my shop there, which I kind of am today too. Sort of ethereal blue colour is what I'm wearing today. So that's some examples there. Here's another one. Very different, but all the same elements are there. So you've got the banner. Again, it's telling you stuff. It's informing you, not just looking pretty. You've got the logo and you've got the picture, and she's actually got an illustrated picture of herself to reinforce her brand, which is really cute. So that just shows you two completely different. This is literally the same screenshot from both shops, but they look completely different because the branding is completely different. Yeah, you can absolutely change the banner to match the seasons. That's a great thing to do. If you want to change it for each season, that's really awesome. Like for special events, don't be afraid to match it up. Just make sure it still matches your brand aesthetic, whatever you do. Okay. All right, so these are the elements we were talking about. Your shop icon. So that's the image that represents your shop across the site. That's where the logo was before. Your shop banner, your photography, and your about section. So don't forget about your about section, because you can put photos in there, you can put a video in there. They're all elements that should work together to reinforce your brand. So shop icon here, Emma Make. See that really nice one, very much in line with the rest of her products. Then we've got Elise, lovely logo. Again, see the consistent use of color and fonts there in her shop. Very nice as well. Shop banner, that's a really pretty simple banner. Oop. And then we've got this one, again, another very cute banner, very reflective of what the shop is all about. And that, again, her picture is an illustration, which is really cute. Another one. This is a great example of a collage banner. So yesterday somebody was saying in the photography workshop, I don't have a picture that's big enough to actually fit in that space. So if you don't, you can do this. You can make a collage banner with a collage of your products together in order to fit that all in and make it look really nice. And if you have Etsy Plus, you have the option to have a rotating banner. So a carousel banner. That's one of the things you can do on there. All right. So photography, again, beautiful. You can see this is from that shop that we just looked at before. So it's really bright, really fun, very branded. I like the James, Kylie, like the names with the bit of confetti there. It's still, like if they hadn't put that confetti there, it might have looked a little bit bland, but by putting that there, it really brightened things up. So, and you can see their branding as well on some of their packaging there, which is really nice. Again, if you haven't done my photography workshop, that's available on my YouTube channel now, so you can go check that out. Other collages and special effects created in Canva. Yeah, you can create, so that banner with the 4 images, you can easily create that in Canva for sure. All right. So you can also, don't forget about the featured listings in your shop. So you can, if there's like, I think it's 4 across the top, if there's 4 images that particularly well represent your shop, 4 products, I should say, and that have beautiful images, don't be afraid to put them as your featured products across the top of your shop, and that will just immediately give a really nice aesthetic to people who land on your shop. All right. So your about section, you've got the option to put pictures there and video as well as an option. So put, one really nice photo or a couple of different photos there that show off different elements of your business. Like in my shop, I've got about 4 pictures, maybe 5. I've got like one of me holding some silver, and then I've got one of a product in process. I've got one of customers, like wedding ring customers wearing their rings. So use it to kind of tell the story of your brand a little bit. Tracy's just said Canva has nice templates for making Etsy banners if you're making your own. So that's canva.com. is what we keep talking about. All right. So again, a whole workshop we could do, and I have done actually just last month in the Thriver Circle. I did an entire hour-long workshop on how to craft your about page and your about page message. But long story short, just make sure it tells the story of your business while connecting with your customer. Think of your about page as being about them, more so than about you. So you want to actually be connecting with them via your about page. Remember that when you're creating it. All right. So your shop owner photo, we've talked about that a little bit before. Here's a few other nice examples of that. All right. So let's move on to branded packaging and promotional materials. I'm just going to have a sip of water. All right. So you want to make sure that you're creating a memorable experience for shoppers with your product labels and your marketing materials, because they are an extension of your brand, of course. So here's just a nice example of some of your packaging. It's an opportunity to provide that brand aligned first impression of your product. Reflect on your brand promise and your design palette to make sure that your packaging is in line with those things. So they see the packaging before they see the item. So make sure that your packaging definitely reflects your brand and really clearly connects with them. Like, you want them to open it and feel like they've gotten a present in the mail, really, especially as a handmade business owner. So consider the impact, the impression that your components make. So if you're an eco-friendly business, you want to be trying to minimize your packaging. You're trying to use eco-friendly packaging options, and you want it to look like it's in line with those options as well, right? I know there's a big wall of text in the text too, so apologies, but I wanted to make sure you had this content, especially on the slides when you download them. So some ideas that can elevate your product presentation and build your brand following. Excuse me for a second. All right, back to it. So your product labels, prioritizing those, it'll make your product easily recognizable with your labels, and it'll enable them to track down your business. Remember what I was saying before about buying things on Etsy, making it again over and over again obvious what your business name is and who you are. And the format will vary depending on the nature of your product. So there's just some examples of how you can put labels on or with your products. So like I said, we have the little earring or jewelry backer, and we stamp our name on that, and that's what our jewelry comes on, and it goes inside an envelope, and then we wrap a ribbon around it. So that's our packaging. So your packaging is really important. Now, we want it to look good, but most importantly, we want to get the product there safely. So you need to make sure that you don't sacrifice like good, strong, safe packaging for the sake of aesthetics. You've got to make sure that both of those things are there, because the worst thing is when a package arrives and the product's been damaged in some way because we didn't package it safely. So you may find with certain products that there's a bit of a toss up here, but if you're worried about eco-friendly options, again, there are usually options out there these days because it's become a bigger part of the market. So you can, share information about the use and care of your product in your packaging. Again, make sure that's branded as well. And develop a practical system for scaling your packaging. I remember when I first started my first probably 10 or 20 sales, I actually handmade the packaging. So I saw this template for these cool little foldy boxes. They made a flower in the middle when you folded it together, so like a flat box. And I'd print out the template and trace it onto card, and I'd cut it out and fold it up. That wasn't going to be sustainable long term. As nice as it was, this is not good. So you come up with a sustainable, quick, hopefully, packaging method that you can scale, and it's good time. You don't want to spend too much time or money on your packaging because you have to cover those costs in your product sale prices. Remember, that's where you're getting your money from. So packaging is one of those overhead costs that you need to cover in your product price. And so you want to make it as cheap as possible while also being reflective of your brand. And ideally, it's a really good idea to buy in bulk as much as you can. So wholesale or bulk quantities of packaging, which can be terrifying in the beginning, absolutely. I think a few years ago, I bought like 1,000 packing bubble mailers, and I wouldn't even want to use bubble mailers now because there's like better eco-friendly alternatives, but I bought so many that we're still going through them. So it was, it was affordable at the time, it was worthwhile at the time, but it can be a bit scary to put in those sorts of amount of orders, right? Yeah, used to make your packaging, but it was a pain, absolutely. Okay, so marketing materials. Don't go too crazy with this. Like, yes, they can be useful, like sending extra flyers or business cards, but again, think about your brand. If your brand is eco-friendly, probably putting a plasticky business card in there is not really in line with it. Is it going to be useful to your customer? Are they going to just throw it in the bin? If they're just going to throw it in the bin, don't bother sending it. Maybe come up with something cute like a sticker or a magnet or something else that has something to do with your business and is branded to your business, but they might want to actually keep and use. So that could be a cute way to try to keep your brand in front of them as well. And then, of course, where are we? I'll just give you a few examples there. So again, some cute packaging that's all very well branded. All right, so in-person sales. Now, a lot of us aren't doing this at the moment, but hopefully in the future, we'll get back to it again. So your core marketing materials will be very similar to what you're sending with your online orders, but you might want more of those. So even if you don't include like business cards with your products that you ship out, maybe you want some from market stall so people can pick up your product and take it. Something though that I've seen a lot of people doing now at markets is having either a QR code or having a board with like your business information. It's like, find us on Instagram, here's the Instagram link. Because most people, I mean, I do it, and I think a lot of other people do it too, is when you're walking around a market and you want to like, oh, I really like this business, I'll literally just pull up Instagram and go follow them on Instagram. So I keep connected with them that way. It's like a low bar way to stay connected with a brand. Obviously, ideally, you want to get people on your mailing list at markets, but that's a whole nother workshop as well. But just make it easy for people to connect with you. So even things like, saying, is photography okay or not okay? But by offering that like board that people can take a photo of to remember you by, that's a cool idea as well. So remember when you're creating your booth, when you're creating your signage and all of your materials, you want it to all be very well branded. If you're here in Australia, I highly recommend that when markets are back on again, if you haven't already, go along to one of the Finders Keepers markets, because they have a very high level of quality, and the people do a really good job of designing their booths, and that's a really great place to get some inspiration for that. Okay, another nice beautiful packaging example. It looks so schmick, but it also looks natural. It's another, and here's some more. It's different, very different vibes, but again, definitely gives you a quick idea of what the brand is all about. That's cool. Lois just said, I have logo stickers. I use it to seal the tissue paper wrapping inside and put it on the mailing envelope. Great, that's a great idea. Okay, customer service and social media. I've talked about this a little bit, but let's get into the details. So the voice, tone, and values you apply to your communications bring the personality of your business to life, and you want to create consistency and maintain that consistency across different channels so that the positive impression of your brand to your ideal customer, and what might be positive and enticing about your brand to your ideal customer might literally be off-putting to the wrong person, and that's okay. Okay, so customer interactions, shop policies, FAQs. important thing to know about your FAQs on Etsy is while you can use them sort of like an extension of your policies to tell people more about them, they're not technically policies. So just be aware of that. According to Etsy guidelines, they're not only the policies are policies. So you have to be aware of that when you're using the FAQ section. Okay, so customer interactions. Direct messages, obviously on Etsy messages, they've changed it in the last year or so that it's more like a chat platform almost, especially I think if you're on mobile. I never use it on mobile, so I'm not sure. I'm always on my desktop. So, but I think, there's got more that sort of chat bubble feel to it now. So staying on top of those customer communications and having those positive communications like the thank you message I talked about earlier. Again, make sure they're in line with your values. Don't be... Now, of course, there is research that the faster you can respond to a customer message, the more likely they are to complete a sale. That is true. However, at the end of the day, you've got to have a life outside of your business. So setting some boundaries around customer communication is a really good idea, and communicating those boundaries. That's another really good thing about the thank you message. I literally tell people when I respond to messages in that thank you message. I'm like, I respond to, I'll get back to you Monday to Friday, excluding weekends, within 24 hours. That's what I say. So it gives them a very clear signal that I will get back to you within 24 hours, unless it's the weekend, in which case you're going to have to wait till Monday. And I've literally never in 13 years had a customer who's had an issue with that. So by communicating those boundaries, that's fine. And I think 24 hours is the sort of limit you want to be looking at, except perhaps on the weekend if you have communicated that to people. You can set up an autoresponder in your Etsy messages. So if you're really worried about this, you could set it up every night, and it could go out to your international customers if they contact you overnight. You could set it up over the weekend so that people get an automated reply letting them know, hey, I'm not ignoring you. It's just my day off. I'll get back to you soon. So that way you are communicating with them consistently and letting them know what to expect. It's all about managing expectations. Those of you who are teachers or have kids, you have to do this all the time. You have to manage their expectations to make sure that they don't get, cranky or overwhelmed. So it's very similar to that sort of thing. Tell them what the rules are and then communicate those rules and then stick by them for your sake. All right. So again, creating those prepped messages, really useful. Use the snippets tool. Your policies, you want them to be realistic. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. That is the worst thing you can possibly do for protecting your brand and your brand promise. Don't ever overpromise and underdeliver. You want to do the opposite, if anything. If you're in doubt at all about how long it's going to take to make a product, how long it's going to take to ship a product, under promise and over deliver. So if it's going to take you 2 weeks, if it's going to take you, a week and a half or something to make the product, set your production time to 2 weeks. Like, set it a little bit longer than you think it's actually going to take, just to account for disaster. Same with your shipping time. Don't set your shipping times like super short at the short end of the shipping time. Set them at the maximum end of the shipping time, especially now in 2020 COVID times, where there's all sorts of shipping delays and all sorts of stuff going on. Now, yes, this may possibly lose you some customers, but at the end of the day, it's better to not have a customer than to have a super unhappy customer who leaves you a bad review because their stuff is like a month later than they thought it was going to be, right? So again, manage their expectations, be very clear about what they can expect, and make sure to be really upfront and honest. I think the most important thing you can be is honest and have integrity when it comes to your business. And even if you give people bad news, it's better to be honest about it than to pretend that everything's okay and then hope for the best. It is really better to be upfront with them. They're more likely to be understanding. And again, if you've started that customer journey off with a really strong brand, you've given them that thank you message, you started the conversation, they're way more likely to have a positive feeling towards you and to be more understanding if there are issues. So policies, make sure that you set policies that are right for you. So, do you accept returns? Do you accept exchanges? Be honest about it. Don't say you're going to do it and then not do it. So be honest and clear about those things. FAQ section is really great because you will get the same questions over and over and over again from your customers. So use that FAQ section to answer those questions. And even if they message you, you can just copy and paste it from the FAQ. I do this all the time. Even turn it into a snippet. Each one of your FAQs, turn it into a different snippet, and you can just chuck those straight into customer inquiry emails. So that's very, very handy. All right. Social media, same sort of thing. You want to be continuing your branding with your social media. So you're communicating that brand message to potential customers. It's really weird when you see a brand that is one way and then you go to their social media and it's just really jarring because the imagery is different, the tone of voice is different. Don't do that. Make sure that it's all consistent. The imagery is consistent, the language is consistent, the tone of voice, the personality is consistent. Make sure it's all consistent. That's the most important thing. There's some just really nice examples of Instagram pictures from a business there. So the most impactful posts on social media are often, they include some sort of conversation. So asking a question, sharing a personal story, rather than just going, here's my product, go buy it. Which is fun. You can definitely sell. Don't be afraid to sell. But you'll probably get higher engagement from the more personal story-like posts. And don't be afraid to use call to action. So a call to action is where you end by asking your customer to take an action. It might be you're asking them a question, you want them to answer in the comments. It might be to click on a link, whatever it is. Just remember to always have a call to action in your social media posts. What do you want them to do? What's the point of this post? So keep your aesthetic up. Make sure your tone is aligned with your brand message. Think about hashtags. All of your keywords that you've created for your business, use them as hashtags on social media to broaden your reach to new people. And don't be afraid to use video as well. So that's pretty much what I've just covered there in that slide. Okay. We're almost done, people. What you've got through there in an hour, done well. So here are the links to the workshops. Nick is going to put them in the chat window so you can go save them now. But remember, I am going to send them to you in a couple of hours time via email. So you'll have a backup option if you miss it. Or if you're watching the recording of this and you don't have the links in chat, you can head on over to createandthrive.com/EtsyU, register there, and I will send you an email with the worksheets and the slides. So we've got the target market worksheet. So that will help you to work out who your ideal customer is. And then we've got the 20-10-4 worksheet, which will help you narrow down sort of the feelings, the words about your business. Hashtags in Facebook, not really, maybe 1 or 2, but you don't do a big massive bank of them like you do in Instagram. That's generally not done. Jan has just said followers love behind the scenes pictures, videos, stories. Absolutely. Using stories on Instagram is really great because they only last for 24 hours. Like video, if you want to try video and you're a bit scared of it, just do it on stories because it's only there for 24 hours and it goes away. You don't have to worry about it looking perfect or being perfect. It can be a bit off, it can be a bit silly, it can be a bit badly lit. It doesn't really matter. Again, try to keep it on brand if you can as much as possible, but yeah, those are your worksheets. So do make sure to download those and use them to help you work through that. Just a reminder of the check-in for those of you who missed it at the beginning. As I said, this is to let Etsy know that you have participated in this workshop. The more people who check in, the more they know people are enjoying this and finding it useful and are more likely to continue the Etsy U program into future years. So please do that. I'm Jess V, that's my presenter name, and they'll also get in touch with you about future Etsy U things. That's a great point. Tip, careful if you use an IG influencer, for example, to make sure they will be working within the feel of your brand. Yeah, so you want to pick anyone you work with, an influencer or whatever, you want to make sure that they are very much in line with your brand. Their values are very similar to your values. That's really, really important. All right, so any final questions here? I don't think links are enabled as much as I would. I don't know how to enable them. I'm very new to YouTube Live, but feel free to put your Etsy shop name in the chat, and we can all check out the shops that way. You can just copy and paste it into Google. If the links don't work, that's fine. Do you have any final branding questions for me? Now is the time to chuck them into the chat, and I will do my best to answer them for you. I'm just going to have a little sip of water again. And while I'm waiting for questions, I'm just going to leave it on this last screen here with that link just as a reminder, who I am, where you can find me, and the link for the slides as well. So Carol said, when I commenced, my brand colors were red, black and white, and I loved it. As I've progressed and grown, that fire truck red is looking a bit cheesy. And yeah, that might change over time. And then Carol said, is there a good way to change that slowly, like slide into a deeper, more adult red into the mix, or just do it at the same time? I just change it. Like if you want to change it to what you want it to be. Don't kind of go through increments because it'll just take you longer. Just make the decision and change it all. And you can even do a thing like, hey, I've just rebranded. Hope you all like the new brand. Give me your feedback. So, you don't have to be, it doesn't have to be a secret. You can talk about it and make it part of your brand story. Tracy, can you only use the social media you're good at? Unfortunately, I'm not really familiar with Facebook and not good at IG. My favorite is Pinterest. Look, long story short, you don't have to use social media at all. There's no law telling you that you have to use social media to market your business. I think you should have your profile on the main social media, so Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest. Make sure to claim your business. Make sure to upload, your logo or your profile picture. Make sure to have your a link to your shop there. Just because people search for you on the platform, you want to make sure they can find you. But don't worry if there's a platform that you're not really comfortable with. Don't worry about keeping up with it. The most important thing is to find a marketing system that works for you, finding the marketing platform that works for you. Like if you look at my ethereal Instagram, you'll see the pictures are very few and far between. It's just not at this point in time a huge part of my marketing strategy. I really focus on search engine optimization and Pinterest are my two biggest traffic drivers. So just pick the ones that work the best for you, but also just be aware of your target market. Where are they likely to be hanging out? So keep that in mind when you are deciding that. Lois, I'm wondering how videos can reflect brand. I'm really struggling with videos. Well, I mean, it depends. It depends what sort of videos you're doing. So you could just do really simple videos where you're showing your product and moving it around. Then just make sure the background is the same as your photos. If you're doing more complex video, just make sure that the aesthetic, the space that you're in, is in line with your brand. If you're doing face to camera sort of things, and that the stuff you talk about is again in line with your brand story. Thank you for all the thank yous. It's very nice. Languages for your messages. Elizabeth, how do you manage languages for your multilingual customers? I put stuff in Google Translate. So what I'll normally do, does Etsy have a translation button on messages now? I can't remember. I don't think they do. So yeah, if somebody sends me a message in another language, which does happen, I just put it in Google Translate and then I do the same again. I write the response and then I put it in Google Translate and I send it back to them. And sometimes I'll also include the English translation. So maybe both the English and the translation in whatever their language is to try to make it easier for them. So that's what I do. Pinterest, Yana said, Pinterest is known for being the best platform for sending people to a website. Yeah, if it's your favorite, go all out and do it excellently. Yeah, you can be incredibly successful just using Pinterest for sure. Do you see a difference this is Elizabeth again, the connection you want to establish with your customers when they're not native English speakers? I think it's fine. Again, if you use Google Translate, you'll lose a bit of the nuance of the language flip, but it's still how amazing is that we can just take a message somebody has given us in a completely different language, chuck it in a thing on the internet, and it gives us a translation, and we can do the same thing and talk back to them. It's just amazing. So you can definitely still grow that connection with people, and just mention that. I should have said that in the messages. Say, I've translated your message using Google Translate, and I've used that to translate this message back to you. So please forgive any mistakes in the translation. Yes, tomorrow is social media. We're going to go over the major social media and then go into a little bit more detail on how to get engagement from your customers. Oh, that's cool, Elizabeth. You were originally a translator and interpreter. Awesome. The Etsy U link, yep. Nick will put that in there again for you, so you can click on it. We've got some more Etsy shops there. Someone's still using their kids' YouTube profile. Carol was using her husband's one yesterday. That's quite funny. Any more questions, everyone, before I finish up for today? Remember, we do have the last workshop tomorrow on social media, and the photography one's available to watch right now. And I also have one on search engine optimization, which I did last year as part of the Etsy pilot program. That is available over there, so on my YouTube channel as well. So if you want to increase your search engine optimization, which I strongly recommend you do, it's how I get most of my sales on Etsy. That's where most of my customers come from. Go check out that workshop as well. I did it in November 2019, but I did their search engine lesson again this year, and it's pretty much exactly the same. So there's no real big changes have happened in that time. If that does happen, I'll do an update. Awesome. I hope you all enjoyed that. I hope you got a lot out of it. It's a big job, your branding, but it really makes a big difference in the long run to make sure that you've done a good job. And don't be afraid to evolve it over time. Like my branding for Ethereal changed many times over a couple of years. And eventually I settled on something that I really loved and I was happy with, and it stayed that way. Create and Thrive. I had a bit more knowledge when I did Create and Thrive. I've been in business for 5 years, so I actually worked with a designer to create my logo and my colors and all that sort of stuff, and that's pretty much stayed consistent with a few tweaks here and there over the years. Like I've added an extra color that wasn't there before. So don't be afraid to play with it and evolve it over time. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for coming live. It's always super fun to do a live workshop with you all. And again, the recording of this will be available in a couple of hours' time, and I'll send you the email if you're registered via if you're registered via my website, so createandthrive.com/EtsyU, the one that's on the screen now. I will send you the slides and the worksheets as well. And I'll be back again tomorrow for our final workshop. All right, final Etsy workshop on social media. I hope to see some of you there. Have an awesome day, afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.